Welcome back to your Grace, Grit, and Everything in Between podcast. In the last episode, I shared where it all began, my story from childhood to my 20s. Now we're diving into my 20s. The decade of freedom, fun, and honestly, a whole lot of figuring life out. Your 20s can be messy and magical at the same time. They are the years where you're trying to define who you are, making big decisions, and usually making a few mistakes along the way. And for me, this was a decade of lessons, growth, and moments that truly shaped the person I am becoming today. So I just wanted to I said last week about I had posters in my room like this, like there I am. That is me in 1991, surrounded by Balthazar Getty posters. And if anything to go by, this is what I wrote on the back. Yuck. Who the hell is that? Me really now get away, I'm ugly. So yeah, that kind of just sums up my whole of my teenage years. What I should have included last week was journaling. Now, obviously, I'm here to tell you my story and to give tools at the same time and share with you things that I maybe introduced into my life that made life bearable. And journaling was one of those things. I started journaling when I was 13, and I still journal now, not as regular as I was then, but it really helped for me to empty my head into a book, a lot of rage, um, a lot of confusion, and as I say, I haven't actually reread my journals. We will endeavour to delve into those together, but I do remember the rage, like how angry and how upset and how. So journaling does really help you, and it really helps if you shut the book at the end of the day. It has like that whole closure for your brain. And if you do have trouble sleeping, it's one of the first things that I suggest that you start doing is journaling. Write out everything, like your day, your thoughts, your feelings, close the book and then try and just get a good night's sleep. Things don't tend to look that much different in the morning, but having a lack of sleep will make things look 10 times worse. So let's delve into my 20s. So in my 20s, I had just come out, obviously, of that relationship. I'd brought a house. I was renovating this. This was a shell of a house that, as I said, had damp, lead piping, lead wiring. It needed a lot of work. And back then, to be able to get a mortgage, I had to sign this agreement that I was going to get all the work done within the first 2 years. I had an interest only mortgage for the first year. So payments were only £99 a month. And then they increased to £199 a month the following, well, years. And I was working a lot. I had au pair live with me, and I was also renting out one of the rooms. So it's a 3-bedroom terraced house. My son and daughter were sharing a room. I had an au pair, and I, at one point, was renting out the dining area. And then things kind of changed throughout the 20s, the whole setup of everything. Obviously, the children started school, and yeah, things developed. But when I was 20, I can't really remember much other than working, not seeing much of the children, working 7 days a week because obviously I had to find this money to do the house up. We didn't have central heating in that house either. We just had like a little gas fire in the living room, which I burnt my leg on. And Yeah, I was only really working in the evenings, more so than during the day. But the reason why it's such a blur is because, unbeknownst to me, I was having a breakdown. So I think everything that I'd been through in my childhood and my teenage years with the relationship, and I kind of went down this whole. I really enjoyed working where I was working. I really did not like leaving the children. And I got into a relationship with someone that was working with. And looking back, I think because no one had ever treated me the way that he had, I kind of let go of everything that I was fighting. And that relationship came to an end around Christmas time. And I was pregnant with his child. And obviously, I didn't want to not be pregnant with his child. Unfortunately, like because the breakup just set me spiraling. Yeah, I was working several places as well as like like it's such a blur, but I was working in a number of like pubs, restaurants, and things, working 7 days a week. Because back then, if you worked like over 30 hours, universal credit or tax credits, or something, they used to give you an extra kind of boost. So for me, I think I just became a bit of a workaholic. Anyway, this relationship obviously came to an end. I had to go through a termination, and from having that termination, that triggered my breakdown. I can't tell you how I got through those 6 months because I can't remember. I can't really remember much of those 6 months, to be honest. I had a breakdown. I was referred to a psychiatrist. I was put on Prozac, and I lost my job. And that at the time I was a trainee assistant manager, and there was a lot of stress of that job alongside the other jobs I was doing. But there was a lot of stress around along that side of that job because as a trainee assistant manager, I was being left for 3 weeks to run the whole place. And yeah, all these kind of things just, it was like I guess a bit of an explosion. And the reason why it sounds so because choppy is because I can't really remember. Um, it's sad, really, because obviously I was getting up every day. I was getting the children to school, but I cannot remember those 6 months of my life. I think I was about 20, coming up for 22. Um, the psychiatrist basically said that um, I was living a life of someone twice my age. I'd been through far too much for someone my age. And if you don't offload the things that you go through, it comes out in your body as a disease, like, because that's where the word disease comes from, when your body is at dis-ease. And because I'd kept so much in, that's why they think I've had fibro since I was 11, because I kept so much in, so much to myself. I just got up every day and got on with it. Yeah, it was a bit of a time. I remember asking the doctor what the Prozac did because I didn't like being on medication. I'd heard loads of things about Prozac back then, and basically he summed up medication in one little sentence. He basically said that you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain. This tablet goes to your brain and replaces the chemical imbalance. So it balances you out. It takes a certain amount of time. Some people it takes longer, some people it takes shorter. And I didn't like that. I remember that conversation well, and I remember going home and thinking to myself, I don't like the fact being that this medication's going to my brain. What, how does this tablet, I remember this so clearly. How does this tablet make me better? How? Like, it's just putting, so I was already in the hole. I didn't want to be on medication anymore. I was struggling to pay my mortgage. Thankfully, back then I took out an insurance that covered my mortgage payments when if I was off sick. Because I've always been quite savvy with things like that. And yeah, it was a something that actually my children did that woke me up. So it must have been the weekend, and I just remember waking up to laughing, thinking, what on earth are they doing? There must have been about three or four at the time. Um, and yeah, I walked down the stairs to find them flicking margarine and peanut butter around the room, on the ceiling, on the walls, everywhere. And I couldn't tell them off because I'm their parent. I'm responsible for taking care of them. I'm in bed. I couldn't tell them off. All I kept thinking was, oh, this has to stop. I need to stop this. I need to get back on my feet. I need to be there for my children. I'd done everything, got this far for my children, and look where I am now. And that woke me up. I stopped taking the Prozac that day and I went back out, got a job, and yeah. When I look back over those, I'd say 2 years, the first 2 years of my 20s, um, I was so confident. It was like an act, but was it an act? Was it really me? It's looking back, it's so surreal because that person who could talk to anyone, worked in a pub, often did the splits behind the bar, like spoke to everyone on a night out, if I had a night out, because going to work in a bar is like a night out. I always had someone to go out with because there was loads of people in it was like back in the time where it was just absolutely packed. Um, and I did have a few boyfriends in that time. So I guess when I got with this boy and fell pregnant, I actually, for a split second, I thought I'd had it all. Like, literally, that was it. I've had one really bad relationship. I'm going to have a good relationship here, and we're going to live happily ever after. And I think when obviously that relationship broke down because he was seeing someone else and I had to have this termination, my body just couldn't cope with it. So I kind of made it a thing that I weren't going to let anyone treat me like that again. Like I was going to be better. Well, that didn't last very long. Um, I started working in a restaurant and just started talking to a couple of boys that were back from uni and they were doing crosswords and they used to come in with a crossword and used to do the crossword with them. Um, and I was seeing someone at the time, nothing serious, just, seeing someone casually. Um, but it wasn't working, like literally it wasn't working. So this one of them goes back to uni, and a few weeks later, the other one brought in a cassette tape where it's really hard not saying names and stuff, but anyway, we're going to roll with this. I got a cassette tape with some songs that had written about me. And unbeknownst to me, that's kind of like love bombing. And this boy, when he got back from uni, he was always at my house, even though he knew that I was seeing someone. He was always at my house. He would like stay over. He didn't want to go home. Um, and when me and my situationship ended, we'd booked a holiday to Greece, and I just said to this chap that was always around, I don't suppose you want to go to Greece with me. And that's kind of like where the relationship took off. Um, and only now, well, obviously a few years back, but I can see the red flags all there. They were all there, all in a line. And I just completely just bulldozed them like, oh, well, what the hell? There were so many signs that this shouldn't have happened, that it was a very kind of aggressive relationship. It was very back and forth. If I tried to explain that I was feeling that something wasn't quite right, it ended up in an argument. Kind of like they say all the time now, if you can't voice how you feel about something, or if you've noticed a change without the other person getting angry, then there's a problem. Like, there's a problem. Major, major problem. There was one thing when we first started getting together, and he was going home back to obviously where his mum lived then, and I'd watched him flirt with someone all night long. He was giving me a lift back home, and I was just like, we're near enough there, and I was just so upset and so. There was no apology. There was no nothing. It was just like, it's all my fault. So I asked to get out of the car, and it was before mobile phones, and I walked home in the dark around midnight, and I remember laying there thinking, why would someone do that? If they really cared about me, why would they do that? And you'd think then I would have woken up and kind of got away. Um, but no, no, I didn't. So it makes perfect sense why I had an eating disorder for most of my 20s. Like I would say pretty much from the time that I bought my house or just before, all the way through until I fell pregnant with my third child. Um, because that's the only thing I could control. Couldn't control anything else. Nothing in my life I could control. I could control when I went to work, but not that I really wanted to go to work. I wanted to be with my children. And I think that is why, obviously, what I do now, it's so pinnacle for me, because if it was around back then, my life would have been completely different, and so would have been all of my children. Um, but yeah, I abuse laxatives. And when I say I abuse laxatives, I was taking up to 10 a day. And not just like the soft things, no, the harsh things. I literally, and then became so adverse to having any waste in my body that it just got ridiculous. At one point, I got down to just over 7 stone. And I look back at the pictures now, and I can see how thin I am, but still in my head, I'm telling myself, "Oh, you look so good there." And I know that I was too thin. I wasn't well. Um, this relationship that I was in was very backwards and forwards. He'd leave, he'd come back, he'd leave, he'd come back. And I was just 4 years in out of it. And I was just desperate, desperate for it to end. That's what I wanted. I was just like, right, we're not going anywhere. It's the same. This has been going on for 4 years. Like, there's no kind of commitment. There's no consistency. There just the way he was treating me, and it just the arguments, and just for no reason. just making anything into an argument for sake of an argument. And I basically, and this you will laugh because it's pathetic. I came up with this massive, brilliant plan that if we were married, then things would be better. So one way or the other, he was either going to leave or we were going to get married. So I gave him an ultimatum, thinking that he'd walk away. So when he turned around and said, "You buy the engagement ring and I will marry you," I don't know what happened to me. I just don't know. I don't know what in me thought, "Oh, amazing, brilliant, let's do that." Like looking back now, it's just like crazy. If a friend of mine, and I didn't have many friends, and I'd like to think if I did have the friends that I have now, they would have slapped me. Um, who even does that? Who has the intent of breaking up with someone, but they would never just go, then turn it round to let's get married? Obviously, I was still suffering from some sort of mental relapse. But yes, that wasn't in my control either. The everything that was it was all tarred. The engagement party was tarred by his family. The wedding wasn't what I wanted. Um, and like I say, there are so many signs. Like literally, the universe was giving me 10,000 signs, and I still continued on like a mental person. Um, because seriously, I just don't think I was mentally in my own like we'd gone on like so many holidays and there was just always an argument on the holiday and I remember that he did something to my oldest son on holiday and I was just like, right, that's it. He's not I don't want him near me anymore because he's going to hurt my children. And unbeknownst to me, what he was doing to my children when I was at work, well, yeah, like I know a lot more now than I did then, but the signs were there. Even the fact being that on my wedding day, I don't even look like me. I got married in Vegas because I thought, because his family has basically stated that if it was a church wedding, that they wouldn't go. So I thought, let's go to Vegas and have a honeymoon. For the price of a wedding in this country, I could get a wedding abroad and a holiday, and would get two holidays out of it, and it would be nice. Honestly, the universe, I thank you for all these signs that I'm about to say, but yes, wish you'd just whacked me around the head with one of them. Um, So, I didn't look like myself on my wedding day. I didn't take my ID with me, so when we were going out on the wedding evening, we couldn't get in anywhere. The next day, I lost him, like just walking into a shop in Vegas, and for the whole day, he just completely disappeared. So it's just me and the children. On the honeymoon, he didn't speak to me for 5 days because he got sunburnt. Went. It's like a sandals holiday. Went for meals on his own. Was asked where I was, and apparently I was poorly in the hotel room. Um, Came back, had the reception. Couldn't find him for the first dance. Couldn't find him to cut the cake because he thought it would be amazing if he could just catch up with his friends. Um. So yeah, bit crazy, bit of a crazy time, but that literally took over the whole of my 20s. I had was doing things in the house. It took 7 years, got central heating in, like things were happening in the house, but it was my house, and he wouldn't contribute to the house until I'd asked someone that was renting a room of me to leave. So yeah, it was bonkers. My 20s were crazy. And I can't really remember much other than working and arguing and not being happy, basically, at all. I wasn't happy. Like, I booked the holidays, and because obviously with the house and I remortgaged to be able to do the stuff because obviously the house was making like the equity was going up and literally I wasn't happy that I was having to work so much. I wasn't happy that I was in this relationship that I just felt like maybe that was all I deserved. I wasn't happy with the fact being I had no control. I just what it wasn't what I envisioned my 20s being. Like I didn't, it's not as if I celebrated my 18th or my 21st because I had children. Um, and they were still a priority. And I was telling myself through all of this that I was doing it for them. I was putting up with the abuse. I was putting up with having to work so much. I was putting up with not being happy because they were my focus. Like, took them to Florida for 2 weeks and I, I didn't see it then, but I see it now. They weren't happy. They weren't happy at all with the situation that I'd got them in. Like, my husband was working, he was working shift works, but things had changed there. I don't think there was any love there. And I don't think there was any love for anyone there, like from him. I didn't realize, as I said, what was going on when I wasn't at home. And I honestly thought that going to work as much as I was to avoid the arguments and to avoid the abuse and to ensure that the children just weren't around it was the best option. And obviously, I see now, and I know now that that's not what I should have done. So when I say that my 20s were messy, it was a mess, a very unhappy mess. I'm not proud of my decisions in my 20s. I remember saying to my mum once, "Are you proud of me?" And, I don't know what I was expecting from that question, but she basically said, "No. If you'd done things differently, then I would be." She didn't want me to have children. She told me that having children would ruin my life. Yeah, she, yeah, it was the the relationship I had with my mum when I was younger, and it's always been kind of separated, and it never changed when I left home. Um, my mum often told me that I was a mistake, that I should never have been born, and that I ruined her life. And I think that maybe you can understand why I focus so heavily on wanting different things for my children. That I, because obviously my mum and dad argued. I think everyone argues. It, some aspects it's healthy, but I just remember being around a lot of arguments and not wanting that for my own children. So that is where the workaholic in me came in. And I don't know how I got through my 20s, to be honest, without having another breakdown. I just did. I just got up every day and just got on with the day. Yeah, it was crazy. I even childminded for a time in my 20s. Um, well, that might have been my 30s. But anyway, I've done my 20s are kind of like a bit of a blur. I know the first bit was quite fun for the first couple of years until I had my breakdown, and then things just, happened. And I'd love to say that I've got really loads of happy memories from the holidays and things like that, but they were all tarred with arguments and yeah, being in a relationship that I should never have been in. I never deserved to be treated the way that I was treated. My children did not deserve to be treated the way they were treated. Um, however, what happened happened, and you'd like to say, like, I'd like to say that I learnt my lesson, um, but no, um, I don't actually think many lessons were learned in my 20s. I just made a lot of mistakes, and ultimately that has had a massive impact on my older two children, more so my firstborn. Um, and that's why, so many people said to me, like, it doesn't matter, they're children, they won't remember everything. I remember things that happened in my childhood that I wish I didn't remember. Um, and obviously, it could have gone one way or the other with me. I could have gone down that route and been like my mum, but I chose to just the other option, like the maternal option, going from a mother that like wasn't very maternal towards me to being a very maternal person, but also having to work to avoid things going on at home, as well as dealing with renovating a house and all the other things that happened in those 10 years. It's just crazy. But I know now looking back that those years were not happy. I would say two-thirds, most definitely two-thirds of my 20s, I was miserable. So I think that's also why I try to help others with bridges. Like if I've been through something, if I come across someone that's been or is in an abusive relationship, like just by talking that to them, I can picture what they're going through and how they're feeling. And I know that had anyone tried to save me, not that anyone did, but had anyone tried to save me in my 20s, I'm not sure if I would have listened because that's just part and parcel. But then because I've never had really any friends, like any close friends at that time, I just had work colleagues and things like that. I I just worked. I just remember working a lot and loving working because the amount of money that I was earning and the fact being that I could do all these things for the children in the home and I could take them on holidays. But what I failed to see and realize until now, well, until about 14 years ago, that all the children really wanted was me. They just needed me and I wasn't there for them. And that is a massive regret. Now, I always say, like, I don't regret things that have happened to me, but I do regret things that I've done that I could have done differently. And especially when it comes down to things that are my decisions and my choices and the repercussions that it has had on my children. So, yeah, that's basically my 20s. Not much, just a little bit of a whirlwind. Um, but yeah. Okay, let's go through some of these questions that I've got. Um, what did adulthood feel like to me back then? Adulthood felt like working. That's it. Work, work. I don't remember much, unfortunately, of that time. And obviously, I just had 6 months worth of therapy where we went over that relationship, and it's trauma. You deal with trauma in so many different ways, and for my brain, I think that's why I have chronic PTSD, that my brain keeps coming to me with these memories from my past, asking me if I'm ready to deal with them right now. And some of them I'm not. I don't want to. It's not that I don't want to admit things that happen. It's just that I lived through it enough. That was hard enough. I don't want the memories coming back to me, challenging me, asking me if I want to deal with it again, because I don't. Um, did I feel free, lost, pressured? I felt miserable. I I think because of watching my mum and dad's relationship, um, I kind of, without knowing it, probably got myself into the same sort of situation. Um, and I dealt with that the best I could. Wasn't the right things. I didn't do the right things, obviously. But at that time, you have two choices, and I made the choices, and I have to stand by those choices. Um, what were 2 to 3 defining experiences of my 20s? That ultimatum should never have happened. I should have just ended the relationship and walked away. I wish I was stronger. I really wish I was stronger in my 20s. Um, Massive mistakes. And I can't tell you that I learned from my 20s because of things that happened in my 30s and my 40s. But yeah, hardest lesson was leaving my children with someone that I trusted to look after them. That's been the hardest thing that I've had to kind of adapt to. Um, the advice I'd give someone in their 20s right now, wow. Probably if you're in your 40s, would you make that decision? You know, because in your 20s, you think 40's old. You think, you're going to have life all figured out by then. So in your 20s, if you have a decision in front of you, ask yourself, if I was 40, what decision would I make? Because ultimately, whatever decision that you make will affect 40-year-old you. But also, you need to stay grounded to who you like, that child who you were. You are showing up for them. Like when you're going through like these decisions and scenarios, just think of older you, younger you before you make a decision. Right. So there you go. That was my 20s. A chapter full of a little bit of highs, lots of lows, and everything in between. Looking back, I can see how much those years shaped my resilience, my sense of identity, and even the work I do today. So if you're in your 20s right now, I want you to remember it doesn't have to be perfect. You're 20. Your 20s are about experimenting, learning, and planting seeds for the future self. And if you've already lived through them, maybe hearing my story reminds you just how far you've come. Next time, I'll be sharing my 30s, the decade where things really started shifting in a deeper way. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for tuning in. And if this episode resonated with you, hit follow, share it with a friend, and let's keep growing together. And until next time, remember you are enough. You've got this, and there's always someone that is going to help you. Have a lovely week.